Morning. I hope everyone's good. Happy Friday. Happy end to the week. There's a few things going on, but not loads. So this morning will probably be relatively quick. We've just seen a few moves that have gone on. So we just need to run through and be a little bit mindful of those this morning. But apart from that, there's not an abundance of things to really run through or to get too caught up and hat up on this morning. So we will just run through. Aussie Swiss. Aussie Swiss. Now, the Swiss franc in general posted so much potential last week that we were talking about yesterday. The beauty is that obviously we've started to now reject from a key area, and we're starting to see everything that we would want to see in the sense of lower highs. So the potential for Aussie Swiss to certainly come back to the realms that we wanted to see it in originally look quite probable at the moment, and are starting to look more and more likely. We're also starting to get the remnants of this head and shoulders formation as well. So I think 71.30 is going to be very, very key for the pair. 71.30 for this seems to be the big number, the realm that we've just failed to manage to break through time and time again. So that is obviously naturally going to be the port of call that we are most interested in, that we want to see taken out the most before obviously we see potential movements elsewhere now. So getting below that is obviously our first port of call. However, below that level, it seems kind of almost inevitable that if we can get through it, then that 70-50 region should come into play. So it presents us with a good potential trade for the rest of today. Also, possibly into next week, depending on how we set up also. So there's a lot of potential surrounding it. It just depends as to whether or not we're going to see one of those potentially make their move. If we don't, then obviously we are kind of stuck a little bit in a position where we are going to be in no man's land for a little while. So it just requires us to exercise that little bit of patience. However, below 71.40 does naturally give us that option to be able to take that potential position. So it presents us with everything that we would want to be seeing right now and currently. So obviously we just have to wait and see. I personally do have a sell order at 71.30. I am more than happy to place a sell stop at 71.30, looking for that eventual break below, and if that option can come into play. Somewhere around the lows obviously would see us clear of the consolidation. We've seen that last ditch attempt on the daily time frame to drive price up, and obviously the failure to break the highs. That is a massive, massive thing for the pair. So that eventual drop down does now look the most logical scenario. Dollar yen, obviously yesterday we were talking about that potential to break back above 107. We saw that and we are now trading at 108.40. So obviously that push to the upside has come into play. I did a quick video yesterday morning just saying that above 107.50 was a possibility, but for me personally, the risk to reward was gone. Anyone that took it, fair play to you. Anyone who managed to take it from the 107 region that we had spoken about earlier in the week, then fair play to you. Personally, it's not a position that I have been involved in or at any point this week. It's an opportunity that has passed me by, but was certainly a very good opportunity that seems to have more than paid dividends. When it comes to potential further upside targets, let me have a little look. I think at this point in time, you have to kind of consider that 109, 109.50, anywhere between 109 and 109.50 would be the potential area as things stand for dollar yen. If we obviously don't see some form of pullback, you can see from the daily time frame, we have had massive and monstrous moves with the pair. So that pullback at some point is inevitable. It has to happen. If obviously we see weakened NFP results today, then that is likely to be the catalyst required to see that move start to occur. It's very difficult to predict, obviously, non-farm payroll. However, the projections that are coming out that look as if they are the expectations seem massively, massively optimistic. Unless we've seen a catch-up on the construction numbers, but doubtful. So like I say, it could. Seems very, very optimistic, the figures that they are looking at. Dollar CAD, obviously we fired back down, established some support and started to see massive pushes for the dollar last night. Not just in this pair, but obviously like euro dollar, gold, those types of pairs also saw big, big, big pushes towards the end of the day. We've seen dollar CAD spike up to that 127 mark that we were talking about. So breaks above 127.20 now would obviously signify the most logical option for us. Sorry, if we just drag that across, obviously you can see the area that was acting as support previously is now acting as support again. So we have this resistance at 127, but a break above 27.20 should see us head towards 128. That looks pretty set at the moment as things stand. Obviously, I don't see any reason as to why that probably wouldn't come into play. So it's something to be very mindful of and keep a watch of as the day progresses. However, obviously establishing some resistance at 127 is and has proved to potentially lead to downside as we have seen recently. So we need to be very mindful of that, not overly looking to capitalize on any downside movement at the moment, as there doesn't seem to be probable entries available. The long above 27.20 seems far more logical at the moment. Euro USD, like I say, we started to see a large push to the downside last night. Failure to break the highs, broke back below the consolidation lows, and it's a typical entry that I would take 10 out of 10 times. Managed to get involved and took another entry also. So I got involved a little bit around just before the break of 2030 last night and took another entry at 119.80. Also looking, now involved in another entry at 119.30 of a break below the previous lows. If that is going to load, break back below, seen us come back into this region. So it's the last stop on that push to that 1880 region that we have been talking about all week. That seems to have come into play and looking like a probable outcome as things stand. Again, that needs to happen before lunchtime. Otherwise, we're probably likely to need to close the position and take into account the fact that there is a strong possibility of the dollar weakening off around about 1:30 today, and us needing to flip positions from there. So we shall await that out. But that push below 2030 has obviously now occurred and happened, and we have been able to reap the rewards of that. CAD Swiss, obviously CAD been very, very strong in most senses across the board. It's only dollar CAD with the dollar strength that has proved otherwise, and also the Swiss franc that has just been the absolute whipping boy. The Swiss franc, or I should say the Aussie dollar, seems to have weakened off a little bit, and obviously as a result, we've seen Aussie Swiss start to fall. The same cannot be said for this pair. In actual fact, not really even bother looking for potential entries or potential scenarios with it. With it being so late on a Friday, we've obviously seen last week's rejection completely taken out. We've had a massive week for the pair. Not interested in looking for any potential positions now. Those have far surpassed and gone past anything we would potentially be looking at. Now, pound New Zealand, get rid of that. Obviously closed that position around 190, 180 yesterday. We saw that rejection come in yesterday morning and the potential to head back to the upside, and we were saying that should we break above 92.80, then 194 was probably the likely scenario. Lo and behold, 194 is where we have ended up this morning and overnight last night. Where we go from there is very dependent. I do, however, see the potential for 194 back down to 192 or 192.50, and then obviously see where we go from there. That retest looks like it might happen. As things stand, we haven't closed back above the highs. We would need to see a solid close above those highs to want to be able to look for potential fresh movements. However, should that happen and we get a daily close today above the highs at 194, then we can potentially start turning our attention back to 196, 198, and the whole number there also. Gold, obviously we broke down yesterday. We were looking for that push away. We saw the push. We're able to take positions back to the downside from that range that we said that we were possibly trapped in. So between 1720 and 1708. We then seen the breakthrough of 1708 and obviously subsequently found that 117 home that we were talking about at the beginning of the week. From here now, there is obviously the potential to continue to drop. We could take a possible position out at the lows. However, for myself personally now, unless we get an entry higher up, we can get rid of this all now. We don't need any of this on the chart. None of this is overly relevant to us. As things stand, unless we get a push back towards kind of 1710, I'm not really that bothered in taking a potential short entry. And likewise again, if we break back above, if we can get back above this area through at kind of 117.10, then I may be very tempted to take a potential long back up. But I feel like if that was to happen, if any move like that was to occur, then that would be very fundamentally driven. So we would have to be very, very mindful around that. Aussie dollar, obviously, yesterday morning we were talking about that potential. We spoke about the potential to drop from 78.20. We broke back below. We came back retested, and obviously, as a result, have started to see some massive drops come in there. Also, so we had decent potential. But apart from that, like I say, there's not really too much that I want to go through. Aussie Swiss shorts below 71.30 have potential and have some high probability, so we will be mindful about that. Dollar yen now, not interested. The move has long passed us by. We will keep an eye on what is set up on that pair for next week, as there's potential there for some positions. Dollar CAD, the short does interest me if we can get back below 26.50. However, obviously, I think that is very much going to depend on what time of day we get back below. The fact that resistance coming in at 127 isn't surprising in the slightest. If we can get back above 127.20, I will probably look to take a long and ride out. But any positions that are taken on the Canadian dollar at the moment would need to be risk-free by lunchtime. EURUSD, like I say, I am involved. I've closed my other two positions. I've just had one running now from 119.30, and we will let that play out and see how that runs. Again, it needs to be risk-free by lunchtime. CAD Swiss, discounting, don't really care. Missed the potential moves all week. That just is what it is. So we will come back, reevaluate, go again as to whether or not to look at that for the week ahead. Pound New Zealand rejecting 194 as things stand, breaks back below 93.20, would potentially see a very strong possibility for a short back down to 192.50. But we shall wait that out and see how we fare. As things stand, I'm not looking to particularly rush into any position on Pound New Zealand. Not, as I say, given the fact of where we have just found. Gold, 1710 presents a lot of opportunity. If we can get pushes back up into that area, we can short away from it or long above it. Apart from that, I'm not really interested in anything. Although, that said, that's just me personally. There is certainly a position to be taken from 1690 for those that are averse enough to take it. Apart from that, as I say, it's NFP day, so be sensible, be extremely cautious when we start to approach around the US Open today. Watch for those numbers, make sure any positions that you are in are risk-free, as there will be some movements. But apart from that, I hope everyone has a decent day. That's it from me, and I will catch up with people throughout the day and over the weekend.